Hey everyone, Rarity Dash here. Time for another Patreon sponsored blind reaction. And this one comes to courtesy of Storm Shadow, who has requested that I react to another fanfic reading. This time it's one called Bastion, which is by Cloudhop and it's read by Solar. And yeah, not really sure what to expect. I've liked the other fanfic readings okay. This one, Bastion, that doesn't really say much. I mean, Bastion's like something that acts in defense of something. So yeah, it doesn't honestly tell me all too much of what to expect here, but hopefully it'll be a pretty good fic. Let's get started and find out. Here we go. Okay. Nice music. Very classy. Bastion.
Bastion.
It's a cool word.
By Cloudhop. Read by Solar Pony.
Cool. Oh, Scribbler Productions, it's familiar.
There was the equestrian militia.
So is Wooten.
As the fledgling nation grew beyond its first city, the Canterlot Patrol was born. Through countless centuries,
a pretty good narrator
the rule
voice.
of the two sisters grew, and so did their enemies. Soon, Canterlot Castle was given its own contingent, the Royal Guard. Within the Royal
So no
Guard,
art to look at,
Honor
just
Guard,
the title.
highly trained bodyguards.
That's kind of a
charged with
shame.
Safeguarding any high-profile political targets. Once upon a time, there had been two positions of equal stature. Both were the highest rank of any guards pony in the entirety of Equestria. 1,000 years ago, they were the Guardian of the Sun and the Guardian of the Moon. Then, Nightmare Moon was banished, and with her went the need for two separate escorts.
Makes
Now,
sense.
The most important guards pony in Canterlot is simply known as Princess Celestia's personal guard.
Oh. That's an important job.
Is Bastion.
That's a good name for him.
He was expected to stay with her every hour of every day.
Lucky.
He ate when she ate, slept when she slept, walked where she walked. There were no weekends and no breaks. There was no time for family or friends. His only companion was a rotating partner chosen randomly from the rest of the Honor Guard. Each day was a different pony. No pony could do what he did for more than a day.
Oh.
Yeah,
I mean, it does sound
to the princess
a bit
required
rough.
A deep and abiding loyalty few ponies had. It required untold sacrifice, eschewing everything in the name of protecting that which was most dear. There was no bed reserved for the Guardian of the Sun. Instead, he slept on the floor outside whatever room she slept in, wherever she went. He was the only pony in the
Shouldn't he really be
entirety of
awake when she's
Equestria
sleeping?
allowed
I mean,
to
that probably
burst into
is
Celestia's personal chambers for any
an important
reason.
time to guard her.
And one of the precious few allowed to disobey a direct order for the sake of securing her safety. He had to be close enough to leap to her aid under any circumstance. And right now, that meant sleeping on the cold marble floor outside her chambers.
Okay.
He was awoken by a tap on his shoulder. Groggily, he raised his head from his hooves and looked around. Given that it had been a polite tap and not a loud noise or frantic shouting that roused him, he didn't expect anything particularly interesting, but always checked anyway. Yawning, Bastion rose and assumed the standing position he would likely maintain for the rest of the day. He gave a sleepy nod to the guards pony that had accompanied him throughout the night.
Did anything happen?
He half asked, half mumbled. It was a routine question, one that was always met with the same answer.
Not unless you count the mouse I saw scurrying around at midnight.
Bastion nodded again after stifling another yawn. Occasionally, being a guard was exciting. The thing they failed to mention in boot camp was how occasional that excitement was.
Yeah.
Ponies thought being a guard was difficult due to apprehending criminals and hunting down assassination plots. In reality,
Equestria is
the
pretty
most difficult
peaceful.
part was remaining vigilant in the face of unrelenting, constant boredom.
Yeah.
Shift changes in a half hour,
his companion mentioned. Of course, other guards' ponies had breaks. Other guards' ponies had days off and time to rejuvenate. Other guards' ponies had a pub to visit, families to return to, friends to talk with. For Bastion, every minute he wasn't within 10 meters of the princess was carefully accounted for.
Seems like a fair trade-off to
time
me,
he was
though.
away from her was
All
during
that-
the half-an-hour shift
All that
change in the
Celestia
morning.
time.
The one time he was allowed
I
to
do
take
it.
a shower, clean up, and trade in his armor for a freshly cleaned set. A boring, thoroughly uneventful 30 minutes passed before Bastion heard the unmistakable clip-clop of hooves coming up the stairs to the princess's royal chambers. Another white-furred guard like himself trotted towards Bastion and his companion, giving him a nod. Wordlessly, Bastion slipped away, walking down the stairs to the royal guard washroom. A maid was waiting for him and helped him remove his armor before he entered the marble room. A half hour really wasn't much for a morning routine. A quick shower, a visit to the bathroom, and brushing his teeth was all Bastion could manage. The last few minutes were spent putting a fresh suit of armor on. Like clockwork, he was back at Celestia's chambers and properly relieved the night shift guard from his post. The sun had only just begun to rise, and Celestia was still going through her own morning routine. This morning, however, she seemed particularly chipper, as Bastion heard the doors open a full 10 minutes earlier than usual.
Good morning, Aegis. Good morning, Bastion.
Aegis. Another good guard name.
Celestia happily trotted down the stairs, managing to make barely restrained skipping look regal and
Greetings, Your Highness.
I can picture
said
that.
Bastion, speed trotting to keep up.
Something in particular in store for today?
Celestia smiled in her all-knowing, mysterious way.
Oh, I'm sure you'll find out later.
Oh.
Many months ago,
Interesting.
Bastion quickly learned, much to his chagrin, that being the princess's personal guard didn't mean anyone actually told him about what was happening. Furthermore, memorizing her personal schedule was often worthless, as she seemed fond of reorganizing her day on a whim. So, Celestia's vague hints, while annoying, were not unexpected.
Of course, Your Majesty.
He sighed and continued tailing the princess towards the dining hall, eager to feed his grumbling stomach.
Okay. Awkward pause. I guess to
It
allow
was
the
past
change of music.
lunchtime, and the next shift change happened. Normally, Celestia would be taking a carefully planned break from her courtly duties in a specially constructed tea room while Bastion's companion guard was relieved from their 8-hour shift. Today, however, Bastion found himself trailing behind the princess as she personally greeted a pair of ponies escorting a small purple unicorn filly. They did not look like nobles, and Bastion caught himself wondering what unusual circumstances were at play. However, it wasn't his job to worry
Also,
about
the art is
the
interesting,
madness
now that we
princess
finally got
was
some.
fit to immerse herself
I guess
in.
Twilight's going to be in the
His
story at
job
some
was
point.
to keep her safe. He shook his
Looking
head
rather-
to clear his thoughts
I
and
don't know.
scanned the area for threats. As usual, there
So
were
weird.
none, although some pony could conceivably leap from the loose curtains on the other end of the hall, grab onto the chandelier and hurl themselves at the princess. Bastion preferred
What are you
his
gonna do,
ears
Twilight?
to his eyes. His primary objective was to alert the princess of possible danger. Given that she was several thousand years old and unimaginably powerful, her only weakness
Yeah, that's
was
a
the fact
good
that she
point.
was not omniscient.
I'm not really sure
And
she
the
needs
assassin's only hope
many
was
guards.
to catch her off guard before she had a chance to throw up.
I mean, I guess that is always a possibility, but...
All she needed was a split second, the barest of moments to reflexively assemble her defenses. Bastion's purpose was to give her that moment, that extra tenth of a second she needed to gain the upper hoof. To that end, his sense of hearing was more useful than relying on peripheral vision that could only point in one direction.
Makes sense.
At least, it would have been, if his ears hadn't been full of a young filly's shrieks of joy and an unending torrent of questions that only stopped when she remembered to breathe.
Which filly?
Bastion had never been fond of foals, and this one was no different. Gritting his teeth, he did his best to edit her cacophonous voice out of his hearing and focus on any errant snaps of a twig that would betray a potential adversary. He wasn't able to escape the clutches of the
he left me in suspense there.
Celestia had elected to have some of the castle staff show her to her room, much to his relief. As he accompanied the princess towards the evening court, she noticed the slight change in his demeanor.
Not particularly fond of Miss Twilight Sparkle, are you, Bastion?
Oh, that was Twilight?
So you did notice.
He mumbled.
She's not really. I don't really think Philly when I think Twilight.
She lives here now.
This is.
And has been given free rein.
Oh, this is in the past. Okay. Okay.
So long as she doesn't go anywhere dangerous.
I didn't know this was set.
But said nothing more. Celestia
in an earlier time frame.
Rounded another corner, trotting down a long, dark hallway. It was one they had walked down many times before as a shortcut to the courtroom.
I know you aren't much of a social butterfly. But I have to admit, I'm a bit disappointed. You worry me sometimes, Bastion.
Bastion felt his heart tighten. Was she dismissing him? Was he falling behind on his duties? All that mattered in his life was protecting her. All he had was his sworn duty to defend her. The only thing he sought in return was her approval.
You do a job few other ponies can do, and you do it incredibly well. But at a terrible cost.
Continued the princess, her soft voice echoing through the deserted hallway.
You know not of love, or friendship, or even the camaraderie the rest of the guards enjoy.
Yeah, well, I mean,
existence outside of your job.
Who gave him his assignment? Wouldn't it be you?
You are obsessed with it, striving to do your best at that one thing to the exclusion of everything else. While your devotion is deeply appreciated, I fear it is not healthy.
Not healthy?
Yeah, you...
It was his talent. It was his duty. It was his purpose. Why on earth would the princess want any pony else as her personal guard? Even she admits that no pony else could do what he did so devotedly. Celestia turned her head, stealing a peek through the window to the starry night outside.
I know you don't care for fools, but I had hoped against hope that you'd take a liking to young Twilight. You two have much more in common than you realize.
If he wasn't confused before, he was now. A royal guard having something in common with a young bookworm? Perhaps the princess...
I can kind of see it, I mean,
much cider
in terms of personality.
The princess sighed.
I apologize for my error, Bastion. You are one of a kind, and I deeply appreciate the job you do. I just thought I could make it less dull.
As they continued down the hall in silence, he did not understand why she seemed so troubled. Had he done something wrong? Had he failed his princess? That night, he could not escape the seeds of doubt that had been planted, whispering questions in his ear. And it was a long time before he fell asleep.
There's not even any music.
Bastion was woken by the worst sound imaginable.
Oh, well, I mean...
Then again, everything being on fire would have been worse. So it was probably the second.
Okay, well...
Or maybe the third. Either way, it was bad. Because he had been woken by the sound of that accursed purple filly.
Wow.
He hadn't actually caught what she was saying, but as he opened his blurry eyes, he could tell it was still an hour until sunrise, and she had apparently decided to loudly accost his companion.
But when is she gonna be?
Oh God. Oh God.
The small terror.
Okay, Philly Twilight is, yeah.
Today, she had managed to
not quite what I imagined.
Princess Celestia, which was no small feat.
She'll be up when the sun comes up.
That makes sense.
Rook wearily.
Well,
Rook.
duh. She's the princess of the sun. Of course she'll be up when the sun comes up. But when is that gonna be?
She hopped up and down.
Okay,
on
I'm
her short
completely with you
legs
now,
in a manner
Bastion.
that would have been cute
You were
if she
right.
hadn't just woken Bastion up from what had already been an annoyingly short rest.
About an
You
hour.
are right about
Said
everything.
Bastion, slowly picking himself up. The filly's ears perked up, and she seemed to notice him for the first time.
Were you sleeping? Guards aren't supposed to sleep. Guards are supposed to guard things.
That's
Bastion
painful.
rolled his eyes.
Kid, Princess Celestia isn't going to be ready for you.
I mean,
for
I know
an hour.
it's partly intentional, but
Go
I
back
think
to
it's
bed.
worse than it needs to be.
She tilted her head.
But I'm not tired.
Then find somewhere else to go.
He growled. The filly seemed to catch the hint, scampering back down the stairs, calling out
I'm sorry, 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 I'm sorry.
as
Wow.
she descended the spiral staircase. It was going to be a long day.
Okay.
The
It's not-
castle was on high alert.
It's
Every
not difficult to
available
trim the
guard
silent
had
bits.
been requisitioned to guard the newly arrived Saddle Arabian dignitaries.
Oh.
Once again, Bastion found himself alone.
Gotta love the
guarding
Saddle
door
Arabian
to the meeting
dignitaries.
room where Celestia was discussing matters of utmost secrecy with the Saddle Arabian.
Whenever you want important ponies who don't
He had
actually do
been
anything.
instructed to forbid any pony from entering, and the room had been sealed by a soundproofing spell. It had been a rather uneventful day, all things considered, until Bastion spotted a purple unicorn approaching. She seemed to recognize him and immediately beelined for his position.
Is Princess Celestia in there?
Asked Twilight, sitting down next to him.
The princess is not to be disturbed.
He said as mechanically as possible.
Oh, well, I guess she's still busy then.
The filly slumped to the floor and idly scuffed the carpet with her hoof.
She said she'd be teaching me magic today.
Aww.
Bastion realized that he had now been standing in front of the door for over 2 hours, and it was likely that Celestia was now late to an appointment with her student. He fidgeted, not entirely sure how to handle a filly who had nothing better to do than sit around and bother him.
Hey, where's your buddy?
She asked.
Oh.
Huh?
Bastion blinked.
Don't you have a buddy that
Yeah?
Princess?
That's a
She
bit
pushed
concerning.
herself to her haunches and looked around.
I don't see any ponies. Are they invisible?
Wow.
It was such a ridiculous question. Bastion almost laughed.
Wow.
What actually escaped his mouth was more of an exaggerated snort.
What's so funny? Are you laughing at me?
She demanded, stomping a tiny hoof indignantly. Trying not to groan, Bastion face-hoofed. He didn't see a way out of this one,
No, Look, I don't always have a buddy.
he explained. Twilight let out a gasp.
You're guarding Princess Celestia all by yourself?
Bastion nodded,
Wait a minute.
asked Twilight, squinting at him.
You were here yesterday too, but this morning you had a different buddy. I know you did because I'm good at remembering things like that. Always guarding the princess?
Every day.
Don't you get any breaks?
She asked, mortified.
Even the princess takes breaks. She told me so.
Shaking his head, Bastion shifted his spear to the other hoof.
Equestria is relying on me to keep the princess safe. I accompany her everywhere she goes, no exceptions. I eat when she eats, and sleep when she sleeps. I am always right outside her door, ready for anything.
A light bulb seemed to turn on behind the filly's eyes.
You mean you sleep outside the princess's room every night? Don't you have a bed? Isn't that uncomfortable?
Probably.
The princess is more important than a bed.
Well, I bet you're really popular because you do such a great job, right? I bet the princess tells you every day how amazing you are.
Asked Twilight, as though trying desperately to justify his job to herself. Bastion hesitated.
Not exactly.
Yeah, well,
Twilight gasped in horror.
That's terrible. You work so hard to keep the princess safe.
Without warning, the young unicorn dashed over to him and threw her hooves around him in a tight hug.
aww.
Bastion sat there, dumbfounded, as Twilight nuzzled him.
I wouldn't really expect young Twilight to be all huggy. That doesn't seem
I want to impress her with all my
quite
books,
right.
Because I love books and reading and studying, and I'm gonna become the best unicorn ever.
Mhm.
Twilight
Well,
finally let go.
Best
and
alicorn
started
ever.
prancing
Although
around
not.
him.
I mean, I think I like all the
When I
other
do,
ones more.
I'm gonna
But
tell her how amazing you are, and she'll tell you how amazing you are.
also, best unicorn ever. Rarity's got that covered.
At that moment, the doors between them opened, and Celestia strode out with a saddle Arabian diplomat.
Oh.
And, oh, hello, Twilight. I'm sorry. I'm afraid we'll have to begin our lessons tomorrow. Why don't you go find Miss Pumpernickel? I'm
Okay.
sure she has something
Miss
for you
Pumpernickel.
A small part of Bastion felt sorry to leave the purple filly behind, as he once again took his place by Celestia's side. Later that evening, the night shift had already shown up, and Bastion was preparing to sleep. He had just laid down when he heard the tiny clip-clop of hooves ascending the staircase, followed by the small visage of Twilight rounding the corner. She was carrying a pillow in her mouth for some reason. She walked up to him and deposited a large red pillow in front of him, smiling as she did so.
Aww.
I know you have to sleep all the way up here, but I thought a pillow would make it easier.
She explained, nudging the pillow towards him. He looked to his partner, shrugged, and sat down on the pillow. Almost immediately, the filly wrapped her hooves around him in another hug. For the first time in a long, long while, Bastion was unable to keep a small smile from crossing his lips.
Maybe she wasn't so bad after all.
That art really isn't that fitting, considering it's Alicorn Twilight. Adult Alicorn Twilight. But I guess we can imagine that they still know each other years later. Okay. Thanks for listening. Well, you're welcome. Links are in the description.
The sun had only just begun to rise, and Celestia was still going through her...
Okay, there we go. Well, that was kind of cute. I mean, I don't know. Seemed a little bit dry for my taste, honestly. I don't really know if there was all that much to react to in there. But it was a sweet little story, I guess. Yeah, it was pretty good. I mean, I do kind of, I don't know if Little Twilight would be like that. I mean, this is Twilight. This is the Twilight who never really learned friendship. I mean, it's pretty much established canon that the only pony she opened up to, really opened up to, was her brother. Before that, I mean, I guess there's Cadence too, if you really want to stretch it, and I mean, she had her old friends, which the whole point of Amending Fences was that she didn't really connect with them on a level, a deeper level, and that was the problem. She didn't really actually let them in. So, I mean, I don't know. I can't really see Little Twilight quite being this exactly. Little Twilight, I don't think, would be that nice and sweet. She would be a bit more a bit more precocious, a bit more just self-concerned, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It just doesn't seem quite what I would expect. But I mean, I don't know. With that considered, there really isn't much else to the story to really look at. I mean, it was well written, I would say that, and well read. The narration was really good, and the voice acting was pretty good. I mean, except Twilight, who was a bit painful on the ears, but that's at least partly intentional, just to make her obnoxious, because the story says she's obnoxious. But I mean, it was a bit too much for me. But yeah, it was well presented, well written, and I mean, sweet. But just, I mean, I don't really know if it did all that much for me, all things considered. It was fine. It was harmless, but just not really. Not really worth all that much to me, honestly. But I mean, it was good. I won't say it was bad. It just didn't really do a whole lot. But I mean, I guess that's fine. Sometimes it was okay. Anyway, hope you liked the reaction. Let me know if you did, and see you in the next one.